Tonight on PM Express, President's media encounter, the post-mortem. The several issues that emerged in the last 2 hours when the President addressed the media, of course, was addressing the country, but did it through the press. Key points, some of the things that he said today that came out. 1.2 billion CDs, NHIS arrears have been paid, the President said. The controversial medical drones policy, the President says, will go ahead in spite of all the agitation that we've seen from civil society, from GMA and other groups. The President says it will go ahead. This is new. We didn't know this before. 400 million CDs or dollars, we didn't get a clarity on that, but 400 million have been recovered so far from collapsed Capital and UT banks. They collapsed last year. They went under last year. The President tells us today that they've recovered this amount of money from them so far. That's something that we learned today as well. Plus, 79 factories executed so far under the 1D1F, one district, one factory policy, according to the President. Now, Ghana set to meet the requirements as far as the President is concerned to exit the IMF program. The President was very confident about this today. The IMF doesn't seem to agree with this. If you read the IMF September evaluation, IMF raised a few questions that the government will have to address if they are to meet the requirements and the targets by end of year. We'll interrogate that. Now, so on the encounter today, this has been one of the most controversial issues this week, and we've dealt with it on PM Express Monday and Tuesday. The President was asked about it, the Oslo Chancery Building controversy. This is what he said. Remember what the minority had said? And then asked yesterday at the press conference that there should be a probe in it. The President is insisting today that there will be no probe. It says it's flimsy and it's fabricated. So why should he spend efforts of the government to be probing something that has no substance to it? That won't happen, the President says. He also says no money has been spent. In fact, on this matter, he called in the Foreign Affairs Minister, Shelayo Koboche, to address it. And we understand the Foreign Affairs Minister herself will be addressing a press conference tomorrow at 11 on this. But these are the three key points the President laid out today as far as this is concerned. Now, remember that this is a very controversial subject. But there is even more controversy tonight. We'll be delving into this. After we've dealt with some of the key issues, we will divide the show into two. We'll analyze first the substance, which will be the last 30 minutes. And the first part of it will deal with these concerns that journalists are raising tonight. And in social media is beginning to trend. One, shortest time allocated for media questions, possibly ever in a media encounter. The President did a monologue, as far as he was concerned, for 40 minutes. A monologue. He just came, delivered, almost like a State of the Nation address. 40 minutes. We know from the timing, because we've been checking this, arrived 30 minutes late because the program was supposed to start at 5 p.m. He got there just a minute to 5:30. So you can combine that. That's 50 minutes gone already. And many of the invited journalists were very disappointed. The fact that it was short, it was rushed. The information minister had said, let's do the question time in 1 hour. The President said, no, I want to do it and end by 7. And by which time he had already done his 40 minutes monologue, taking us after 6 p.m., already depriving 10 minutes from that. So the format has become a key controversial point. Did we get what we needed from this? If this was a media encounter, why did the President take more of the time and give less to the media? We'll be interrogating that. My guests are seated. When we return, we'll delve into these vexatious matters. Stay with us here on PM Express. My guests are seated, and quickly want to introduce them to you because we have a lot to go through tonight. My colleague Manasseh Aziri-Awuni is joining me in the studio. He is the head of our investigative desk here at Joy Multimedia, Joy FM, JoyNews, and has a lot to say about what happened tonight. He was at the Jubilee House today, and I know he had a prepared question. Ask him when I got the opportunity to ask it. Also joining us is Kweku Botwe. He is a media researcher. And remember, for the last 2 or 3 years, each time the President had done a media encounter, his team had come up with research that ranked the journalists in terms of the performance and the quality of questions that they've asked. It's a very controversial research they do, and this is done very rigorous research, really, and they apply, you know, well-tested statistical methods in evaluating the quality of the questions. Each time they put it out, it generates a lot of controversy. So he joins us in the studio today. I'm sure he's been following this very closely tonight. We are grateful also that we've been joined by a Deputy Information Minister, Pius Enam Hajide, who no doubt was instrumental part of this organization. And so if you want to talk about what happened tonight, there's no way you can have a conversation without his input, and we are grateful that he managed to join us shortly after the program ended, just past 7 at the Jubilee House. I'm grateful, gentlemen, for joining us here on PMS. But I must say, they want to divide the show tonight in 2 parts. The first 25 minutes will deal strictly with the format issues, questions that the journalists have about today, and the quality of the questions, those things that you're already talking about on social media. And then the second 25 minutes, we'll deal with the substance of it, what the president said and didn't say, his assessment of the last year, etc., etc. So that's how we're going to approach this. Let's start with the first part, which is the assessment of how today went in terms of formatting. Manasseh, you were there. What's your verdict on how today went? Not to the substance of what was said, but to the formatting and your own expectations going in and what you got out of it.
Well, I came out very disappointed. This happened to be the very first time I took part in this exercise. And my disappointment wasn't because I didn't have the opportunity to ask a question, but I believe if it was going to be a media encounter, then it should have been done as such. You don't invite the media, come and speak to us, and after that, almost everything was about him. There are few positives. One, the opportunity to engage for me is good because this doesn't happen in some other countries. You meet journalists and they don't have this opportunity to even ask their leaders questions. The second part, I think, is the relationship with the GJA. There may have been problems. I'm one of the biggest critics of the GJA, but I also think that if the GJA is brought in to invite journalists and the rest, in the past we had concerns that the presidency often selected journalists they felt were friendly or from media houses aligned to the presidency. Mm-hmm. So if the association, that is the umbrella body of journalists, is given this opportunity to come in and partner, I think it adds more to the credibility of the sampling or even the selection. So that is a positive. But I think the rules that were read, I started having issues. Yeah. One, if you said there shouldn't be a preamble, this is not an opportunity you get to ask follow-up questions. Mm-hmm. So you go, whether a question is answered well or not, you have no opportunity to rebut or even do a follow-up. So if you say we shouldn't give preambles, then you just go, okay, Mr. President, what do you make of this? There should be a preamble to also guide and at least some facts that they cannot deviate from. That's my number one problem. They also said the question should be between 30 seconds and then 1 minute. If you're having a very long interview with somebody, there are times a one word can be a question, your question can be 5 seconds, but you have the opportunity to engage and it is varied. But if you make it very strict that it shouldn't exceed 1 minute, it becomes problematic. I also find problems with writing our names and the subjects we want to ask questions.
And this was the first time this was happening.
Yes.
I mean, as far as my experience is
concerned. The advantage here is that it gives the organizers the opportunity to cover a whole lot of areas so that we don't give so much attention to one sector while ignoring the rest. There have been times some people complain that certain sectors have not been covered. So that is the advantage. The other aspect or the disadvantage is also in the possibility or the ability of the whoever is doing the sampling to want to pick people who would ask questions on issues that the government is very familiar with. So if I'm the one moderating and I feel, okay, we don't have a good record in terms of corruption, I'll look through and then maybe give more time to people who would ask sports, health or areas that we are very comfortable with. I'm not saying this is what happened, but if you introduce such a format, there is the possibility that somebody can manipulate this, knowing that, okay, this number of journalists want to ask questions on, let's say, governance or health. Or in terms of health, we have a lot of terrible issues there. So let's limit the health questions to, or the people who are asking the health question, let's limit it to maybe a question or two and give attention to the other side. So when this happens, it makes way for manipulation. And if people raise up their hands and you don't know what they're going to ask, if you call at random, there's that possibility that you're likely to get varied views. So generally, I was not impressed even with the time that was given. Yeah. Like you said in your introduction, when the president said, well, it must end at 7, I looked at my time and it was 6:07. True. Meaning we had 53 minutes. Yeah. And if you look at these 53 minutes, one side is restricted, another side is unrestrained. He could answer a question, share jokes, call his ministers, and they had all the time. So each time that happened, I felt like, well, you are eating our time, but at the end of the day, he wasn't going to lose anything. So I felt, well, this was just an opportunity for him to come and tell us what we had. But to leave it as we ended, I feel, in all humility, it was a waste of my time.
What about you? You weren't there, but you are the outside researcher. You observe from afar, so you don't get involved in it, so you can scrutinize us and the president's performance and everybody. What's your view? What's your own take on what you watched?
The first disappointment was when it ended. I mean, we were doing the coding with volunteer students. I was doing it with students, and
so you had people in the room trying to code while this was
exactly, because we have our coding sheets and everything ready. And when they said it's time, everybody was like, "Wow!" Like the students couldn't believe it. It's because this is the shortest we've had. In previous years, we've had about 21 journalists asking questions. This time, I think it was 14 journalists asking questions. So it ended abruptly for us, sitting there. We were waiting for more questions and all that. So that was the first thing. And then the second one, which was obvious, is the president using about 40 minutes. And we were counting, so we knew it was 40 minutes. It's like he spent 40 minutes talking to us. And we said the same thing you said, this is a State of Nation address. This is not a presidential, encounter with the press. And that's exactly what happened. So you realize that the press and the Ghanaians were shortchanged, because it was more like the president wanted to tackle the issues even before you asked questions. I don't know whether that's what he wanted to do, because he touched on a number of issues, and it didn't afford journalists the time to ask questions. And then also, because you don't have a time to do a follow-up, it's not right to say that you can't have a background. When you check our coding sheet, background alone has about 3 scores. We look at whether your question has a background or not, because you need to be specific. Yeah. You need to
provide context for your
question. And I understand why the minister would say that, because it gives the politician time to rattle if you don't have a background. You go and, Mr. President, what is the state of this? Yeah. And that's you're playing into the politician's court. So he just talks, and there was a question, he even went to talk about history. Mensa Saba and Co. And I'm like, okay, so this question, they just played into your net and you're talking. So we need questions with background. So we have background, and even with background, we're asking how specific does it make the question in terms of research? And even placement of background. Where did you place it? Is it before the question or after the question? So background is very, very important. And I was surprised to hear the minister say that, hey, we don't want preambles. How can you ask a question as a journalist and not give a preamble, especially in meeting a president with a lot of contentious issues? So these are the issues that are clearly out of order and have to be relooked.
Manasseh, I haven't heard enough you talk about the fact that the president arrived almost 30 minutes late, which was supposed to, the thing was supposed to be at 5. We got there almost 5:30. So that already almost 30 minutes out of the way. and then we're left with maybe the 1 hour 30, and then he did 40 minutes monologue, and then that cut the time even further. Was this something that you observed as well?
I did, but I'm not so strict on their movement because I know how busy they are.
Yeah.
I think he'll travel, came last night, and sometimes for security reasons.
But isn't that why they moved the thing from morning to evening?
Well, I don't even want to dwell so much on that because I don't know what really happened behind the scenes. It is possible there was something so important that he couldn't have left. But if you come late, then I expect you to extend the time.
Yeah.
You don't come late and then make me suffer for your lateness. That is where my problem is. So if there was a legitimate reason for he delaying for that long, I don't really have so much. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. But once he came late, I expected him to have made a bit of time to accommodate us because we were there because of him. The issues he spoke about, almost all of them, we have heard and reported on them since the beginning of the year. Almost every week, these issues come up. If it is not him, he himself, the president, we have ministers, we have government appointees making these points over and over again. So if you give this opportunity to us, come and ask questions, we come and then you take us through such a long period. And when it's time for us to ask questions, we don't get the time. I think that's where my problem really is.
Okay, but Pius Nnamdi is a deputy information minister, so he has the answers to all the questions. And I'm sure since this ended, I'm sure you've had a lot of feedback from us, the side of the table. You called us into a meeting. All the concerns that have come. Let's break it down. Let's start with first the timing question. Before the conversation, before the encounter, was there a predetermined time for the entire event? We know we're going to start at 5. When do you hope to end?
Well, thank you very much, Evans. Good evening to you and my colleagues here and our cherished viewers. If you may allow me to
Sure.
deal with the matters in the way I have arranged it.
In your thoughts? Okay, no problem. We'll interrogate it nonetheless, so you can proceed.
First of all, I think that feedback is important to us, and we will take the feedback with a view to even making these encounters with His Excellency the President even better. But I think that it will be useful that we begin by commending His Excellency for doing this. He has committed to doing 2 times every year, and this is the second of this year. The President has been exceptionally busy, and we all know that. The President came back to Ghana today, and he insisted that he was going to still go ahead and meet with the media. I think that it will be useful that we begin by commending, because like has been rightly said...
Pius, forgive me. I'll have a challenge with your microphone, so we're going to change it for you very quickly. And let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll delve into the key issues. We'll hear from Pius and explaining to us the concerns that have been expressed already. What really prompted it? What really led to these concerns? And then after that, we'll go into the substance of what we heard today. Stay with us here on PM Express. You're still live on PM Express. I still have with me Pius Nnamdi, is the Deputy Information Minister. Also with me in the studio is Manasseh Zuriya-Woni. He's my colleague here, head of the investigative desk, was part of the group of journalists who were at the Jubilee House a short while ago. And Mr. Kweku Botre, he's the media researcher. Pius, you were explaining, you were dealing with the feedback that you've received so far, particularly from this table as well.
Yes, and I was saying that feedback is good. We will take it with a view to improving on our outputs. I mean, it's a human enterprise and endeavor, and from time to time we want to develop on it. We have sought to develop on the several presidential meets the press that have happened. We have brought in some innovations. We think that people need to engage to understand why some of the things that were done. They were done in the interest of the journalists themselves. It was done in the interest of, especially and importantly, our listeners and our viewers. Because even though this is a press encounter, it is to a very large extent about the viewing audience and the listening audience. We journalists must come to understand that even though we are very, very important stakeholders, we are also vessels through which information goes and through which information comes. And so sometimes it is not too much about our personal opinion and about the questions that we may get to ask, but the fact that you were there, you listened, you reported, people are going to read, people are going to listen, people are going to watch, and we play our vessel role by availing ourselves and listening. It is also good feedback that people have enjoyed the Meet the Press and would even have loved to spend some more time with His Excellency the President and engage with him some more. But Manasseh, I ask, and Evans, I ask that, I mean, how many hours is the standard that is internationally agreeable? Is there any hard and fast rule about how much time we should have spent together?
There's a hard and fast rule about a media encounter where it's about the media encounter, not the president delivering a speech.
No, there's no such hard and fast rule. And
There is.
No, there is not. A
For
press
40
encounter,
minutes.
a press encounter, that's what I'm saying, that there is no such hard and fast rule. I'm saying that it is desirable that we are saying that the other time, some 21 questions were asked. Are we saying that, okay, that met a certain benchmark? Because there is no such benchmark. We only
No,
have to...
I'm not. Your question about hard and fast rule.
Yes.
The rules governing a press encounter.
Yes.
Is a press encounter, an exchange between the president
Absolutely.
and the press.
I'm saying that that's exactly what we had.
That is really
and if
circumscribed.
I put it in
But
context,
that's what we had to do.
No, that's what we had. If I put it in context,
president spoke for 40 minutes. It
and
doesn't happen on a press
gave the opportunity for a Q&A for, according to Mr. Manasseh, 55 or 57 thereabout minutes. And so 53 minutes, and you say he spoke for 40 minutes, okay?
Yes.
My own watch tells me that we had a Q&A for 1 hour, but that's 7 minutes is not, I can defer to his judgment. But if a president or somebody invites you to a press encounter and speaks to you for 40 minutes and allows you to interrogate him for 55 minutes, much more time than he actually spoke to you, I think that we can say that we want more time, but we cannot say that fundamentally the thing is flawed from the very, very beginning. And I want to deal with the issues one by one and deal with it. See, the thing about collaborating with the GJA to facilitate and coordinate the invitations is to allow for people like Mr. Manasseh Azuri to come in. And I am happy that he admits that this is his first time. Mr. Manasseh Azuri has been practicing journalism and critical investigative journalism for God knows how long in this country. And we would have thought that people like him would normally get invitations to these programs. But it is our view that if it is left to the political players to do the invitations, sometimes we want to avoid the critical thinkers and the investigative people like Mr. Manasseh and so on and so forth. So I'm not surprised that over the years, Mr. Manasseh may have been avoided.
That is a very good initiative.
I think that
bringing in the GJA is a very good initiative because in the past, one of the biggest problems we've had is people at the Jubilee House dictating and looking at faces and deciding who comes or who doesn't come. So we commend you for that.
And I think that I'm sure that was your face on Facebook. I do not think that the same media encounter that granted you your first ever access to such an event can be described as the worst. You have had situations where you were not even invited. Now you are invited. So to describe the event that at least you got an invitation to as the worst, for me, is quite far-fetched. You may have been disappointed that things did not go the way maybe you wanted to ask a question, and I noticed that you did indicate that you wanted to ask a question, and so on and so forth. But I think that it is quite far-fetched, and taking it beyond a certain limit, if you describe it that this is the worst. I mean, in my view, if it is not the best, it should be a good encounter, because at least, and how did you get invited? We got invited because we removed ourselves largely from the invitation and left it to the umbrella body of the Ghanaian journalists. And I believe that is how come I noticed today people from Radio Gold. I noticed today people from Radio Gold who were on my list of attendance. And so we have to be fair to the facts and let the people of Ghana...
Let's deal with one other concern, because
you are interested in dealing with...
you said yourself you want to deal with the issues one after the other. I think you've dealt with the issue about
the invitations. Then the other one is the ground rules.
We'll come to the ground rules. What was the reason for the writing of the names?
Yes, those were the ground rules. And let me also explain that. We had agreed on this. There was a series of meetings with the GJA. There were banters, they had positions, we had ours. We justified it, and then they understood what we sought to do.
So the ground
what
rules,
we sought,
the GJA agreed with you that you should.
Yes, they did agree with us,
including
on the
that we shouldn't have a preamble.
No, nobody said that, and I read the ground rules myself. In fact, I wrote the ground rules as was being dictated in a meeting. I took minutes, and after that we typed it and we agreed on it. We said that no long preambles. And I can give you the right tab. I read it out. We said no long preambles, and we did even say, we went as far as saying that no unnecessary praise singing. And somebody comes to say, Your Excellency, you are in a nice African wear, this is nice, Your Excellency, ever since you became president, a lot of dignitaries have been visiting the country. I mean, we would have loved, as a politician, we would have loved that people come to heap praises on His Excellency the President. This is on national television. Millions of people were watching. But we said that we didn't want that. We didn't want that praise singing. Why? Because we wanted to manage time. We wanted to give people like Manasseh a lot of time to deal with the issues and the reasons why they came there.
What was the reason to limit the questions to a minute, maximum minute?
Well, because, again, that's exactly the point. There were 111 journalists today who were seated there. We wanted to give as
111.
Yes, we wanted to give as many journalists as possible the opportunity to ask questions. In fact, 74 journalists indicated to us that they wanted to ask questions. And why we wanted to keep it between under 1 minute. And I did speak for 1 minute. Before we're doing this, we actually illustrated some of these things. We gave time for somebody to speak. 1 minute. You can say a lot of things within 1 minute. You can give a reasonable background. You can set a reasonable preamble and ask a relevant question within 1 minute.
That's true.
We have tried that so that we can give a lot more people the opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask. That's number one. And then
the bit about you wrote your name when you are entering.
That's right.
And then you indicate which area.
Yes.
That's again, the first time I'm seeing this.
Again,
what went into that?
That is the innovation. And again, let me stress.
What are you fixing with that problem?
It is, it is again to deal with the historical challenge that we have faced of the charge that we have neglected some sectors of the Ghanaian economy. Because you see, Manasseh speaks about the discretion of the minister that may be abused when he is moderating. But even if you raise your hand, the minister still has discretion. Mr. Manasseh, you can raise your hand, the minister will not choose you. So in any scheme, there definitely will be such abuses. I would have thought that time would have allowed us to have run the full hall. And based on that, we can come to the conclusion that, well, the methodology that was used was abused, and this is the evidence. Because you see, I know, sitting from where I was sitting, and I was working closely with my boss to organize the Q&A and all of this. Somebody like Mr. Manasseh was on our list. Because what did we do?
But you didn't call
him. Yes, and we'll come to that. We'll come to the time part, which is, for me, the main issue.
Yes. So can we get there quickly?
No, but no, you asked about why you had to do that.
Yes, I think
and I'm saying that in the last years, people came, and sectors like the creative arts industry, like sports, like health, like defense, like security, these areas were not touched on. Maybe it may not have been too appealing to a large cross-section of the Ghanaian media. So what did we try to do? We broke it down, and true to our expectation, there were sectors that had 1 question, 2 questions, which means that if we had allowed it to, on the balance of probability, the probability of them getting the opportunity to ask questions, if we had picked them randomly, was very negligible.
Okay,
so we decided to do that so that we can at least give some minimum attention. So we were guided
as many sectors as possible.
So we were guided by the density of questions in every sector.
Okay, so let's deal with the time, because then that links to the time. If you had that, and you had 111 people,
yes,
and you gave only 14 people ask questions, that is, I don't know what to call it.
Well, I think that I myself, I was enjoying the program. I would have wished that even now we were still there. Practically impossible. We gave His Excellency 2 hours.
Okay, so that was the time.
That was the time. And believe you me, even after that program, His Excellency has another program. Even as I speak to you, His Excellency is engaged in another duty of state. And so maybe next time we have to plan and see if we can do 3 hours or more. But
next time, reduce the monologue.
No.
So that if
No.
the president speaks
No.
for even 10 minutes,
No.
even 10 minutes, then open himself for the questions.
No, Evans.
Because what he said today, nothing was new in it. We heard it before.
No, to you.
For the beginning.
But the president was not necessarily speaking to you, Evans. He was not speaking to Mr. Manasseh. The president was speaking to the almost 30 million Ghanaians. And in fact, he was
that
speaking
should have
to...
been the state of the nation address. An encounter with journalists.
No, Mr. Manasseh, I say that when we journalists, we must see ourselves as stakeholders in the governance process, i.e., therefore engage, ask those probing questions, and so on and so forth. But on the flip side, we must also recognize ourselves as vessels.
Yeah.
So you can actually
But do you know how we can do vessels? When we ask the question on behalf of the people,
well, that is
you
one
say the
way.
president was
The
addressing.
other way you can be a vessel is
when
when you take the president's message, his story, to the people.
No, the president has so many avenues to do that. In the press encounter, we do that by asking questions on behalf of people. Then he can address them.
I agree, but that was what was done today. You're saying that we may not have asked too many questions, and you're saying that the president maybe next time should go slow on his own story, his own narrative. Yeah. But the challenge that I can't speak for the president. I'm deputy information minister. Yeah. But on this matter, I think that the president's challenge is that when you have so much story to tell, okay, when so much has happened, and especially when there's
do a national address. The president can every day in a week decide to do a national address and speak for 10 hours.
Well, but
nobody will
you also know that.
When you call a media encounter,
you also know
it's
that.
A media encounter.
That is to suggest that. You see, let's be fair and let us notice that it is not the case that beyond this, journalists also do not get the opportunity to engage with the president. The president has always continued to engage with journalists, and so there is no such. And again, let me say, no such hard and fast rule that, well, okay, you have had all the time, this is our only time, so let's ask questions. From time to time, the president grants access to the media, they ask him questions. Yeah. You understand? So we get the feedback. Okay. I'm honestly, we get the feedback. But I'm saying that we should not overstretch this and overreach it.
At least from the last one to this one, you've listened, so you tried to change things. You didn't go up, but we'll see. Manasseh briefly on
yes,
the
because he made mention of the fact that once I was invited, in this case, I shouldn't have said it was the West, and I have indicated earlier on that it is not about me. It is about enjoying and listening to this program. Sometimes I watch on TV. And I said at the beginning, like you mentioned, there were things we commended and there are other things, but overall, I felt quite disappointed. And you kept on saying about carrying the message. We live in this country where we have difficulty in getting interviews with our leaders. Most of the time when they travel outside the country, the foreign media find it easy getting interviews. There was, I think, Washington Post or New York Times came to do a story about KFC, and they had the opportunity to interview the president. And the question is, okay, if you're doing a serious report in this country, you find it very difficult. But so we believe that...
Have you requested,
we believe that
requested an interview with His Excellency?
I have.
No, but I'm asking Mr. Manasseh.
We work together. So there were things I commended, the GGA collaboration, for instance. So we are not saying everything was, no, the innovations, we have the negatives and the positives. But overall, you should be asking yourself, why didn't the previous one attract this barrage of criticism? And this one is, if you go through social media, take my comment out, but you realize that quite a number of people have issues. So this tells you that, okay, something may have gone wrong, and this is a good program. How do we make it better next time? And if I had my way, the president should come in and give 5 minutes introduction, greet us, and then we ask the questions. A lot of the things, he spoke about the economic indicators and all of that.
Let's do the substance now.
Yes.
We can do that. We can do the substance now because we just have a few minutes left. Yeah. Let's do that. You mentioned, you started it. Let's do it.
Yes. So I'm saying these economic indicators and the rest, when the vice president is talking, he mentions it. The finance minister mentions it when he goes to parliament, budget, state of the nation address. So I believe all of these, for me, were not very necessary. But if you're even talking of the substantive issues, one of the issues that made a lot of headlines was this guinea fowl thing.
Yeah.
And for me, I led it. Yes,
I confirm.
The guinea fowls flying to Burkina Faso.
Oh, okay, all right.
And for me, I think if people around the president should care, they should tell him not to be talking about those things.
Why not?
Why not? You accused the Mahama administration of corruption, this guinea fowl thing. 2 years into office, you haven't done anything about this guinea fowl thing. And you can't speak about it and laugh.
No, Mr. Manasseh, that is not entirely correct. If I may just come in. If you say that you haven't done anything about
tell me
that,
what has been done about the Sada rot.
See, that's the point. I think we need to ask first before we get judgmental.
I am speaking from a position of knowledge.
Because what you want to see, and a lot of people want to see that,
yes,
is prosecution, is imprisonment, and so on and so forth. That is if people are found guilty. But before that happens, is the hard work of investigation. And I can assure you that in times past, investigation was not done. Today, the president gave an example, or in fact, invited the health minister to give you an answer that relates to a forensic audit and told you the practical difficulties that people are facing.
So
we have had to use some time to do investigation. So if you make the fundamental statement that around the guinea fowl thing, nothing has been done,
I am
without
telling
checking, that will not be entirely correct.
Telling you from a position of who is investigating? Is the CID? I'm telling you, nobody is investigating the JIDA thing. When you people came into office, recently I wrote about this JIDA thing. Nobody is investigating the SADA. So when we have such an important platform, we are talking about one corruption, and then the President of the Republic makes a comment to the effect that, well, guinea fowls flew away, there were no trace. Whose duty is it to now trace? You spoke about it in opposition, you are now in government. Why not take steps to ensure that investigations are done and the monies
but
that
the two
were
are not
pumped into
mutually
it?
exclusive. The two, you can still talk about
Yes.
it whilst you even investigate.
And what I'm saying that
because it is a fact that the guinea fowls flew away. They did not.
If they were talking about it and acting, I wouldn't have had any issue. But I'm telling you for a fact, and you can cross-check with all the investigative bodies, nobody is doing anything.
Okay, so Manasseh, your point is that it's too serious to pass as a joke.
To pass as a joke.
But I'm not sure it was meant as a joke. I took a serious view of that. That His Excellency says that
the president laughs and everybody did.
It was not a joke. It may have sounded it was not jovial, but it was not meant as a joke. When the president says that he prefers drones flying and delivering emergency medical supplies than guinea fowls flying
to
I was touched. I took it as a serious comment.
I see.
And I think that it actually puts the whole matter about the drones and so on and so forth, about the use of resources into perspective.
No, hold on, let me come to you, Mr. Bochu. Mr. Bochu, so you look at the event today. Give me the assessment of the substance, both from the journalist questions and the responses that we got from these questions.
Okay, so as we've stated earlier, not too many journalists had the opportunity compared with previous ones. And
but those who did?
Yeah, those who did. Looking at their questions that were asked, it's not getting any better. Because, I mean, we're doing the coding and we'll come up with a result tomorrow in terms of even the structure of the questions. And I don't know whether because they said maybe you have 1 minute or 30 minutes, or maybe people didn't want to give enough. A lot of the questions didn't have the background to give it the punch that will get the president to stay within a certain
you restrict the president to within. You don't allow him.
Yeah, because if you give him the room, he will talk and talk.
I describe lock him in.
Exactly.
Lock him in. He can't play around.
Exactly. So we didn't have enough questions that really restrict the president to be able to answer the questions within a specific, radius. So for us, we want to see more of such questions because we've been doing this monitoring this is the 4th time we're doing it, and we expect to see that journalists will come knowing that a good question should have a very good background, it should be well researched, and
the question should be direct at the end of the background.
And if possible, you should punch the person, the answer, because you punch people when you point out ironies. You're saying one thing, but you're doing another, and I have the figures here. When you punch him, you get the best out of him. But if you go and ask a question, one-line question, no.
And I know the president appreciates tough questions.
Yeah, but
by the way, I'll come to you. I'm sorry, I'll come to you.
And that's when he gets to go into Mensa Sabah history, talking about all those things, because you have not given him much. But one issue I want to touch on is that, you see, the minister was saying that they wanted to have all-rounded questions, and that's why they, you see, that is not the job of government. When journalists don't ask the right questions, nobody criticizes government. It is the journalists who are criticized. And over the years, we've had people say, hey, they didn't ask the right questions. So it's not the government. So why is the government going to fix something that is not its problem? It is the journalists who have to fix the problem, that we need to ask these questions, we need to have a rounded question. So giving that as an excuse to want to fix something, for me, is not your job as a government.
In terms of substance, the president's answers.
Again, you see, the question determines the answer. So there was even a question about a stadium built in Kumasi, and the president said, oh, we'll give you an answer later. He didn't even think it was a question that, you know, demands
there were a few times he brought in his ministers.
No.
And there was a question where the president even brought in a minister, and who couldn't even answer the question. And you saw the question, the background. The guy had BP.
The one about the health. The Michigan.
It was
Michigan.
Yeah. No, but the minister answered it. The minister answered it.
No,
the minister said the people came to him.
Yes.
He asked them to. They said they're going to bring Bill Gates and the chief executive of the Michigan Aerospace.
Yes.
And they came with some guy who was neither the Bill Gates.
But before then,
the
minister said he had not read the report.
True.
Yeah, he said he had.
But he answered the question.
Yeah.
He answered the question.
So it was based on the delegation that came. But the Ghana delegation that we paid money, 7 people, sent them out, you know, spend taxpayers' money. They came up with a report. And if you have probably read the report, we probably have found, you know, maybe the problem we are trying to solve is right here. We have the answers right here.
But to be fair to the minister, this happened in the erstwhile administration. These have to be on the handing over books for the report. I mean, has to be on the handing over books for the minister to be able to read it. And so we need to. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying he has to be, because the minister made the point that he has not seen the document the gentleman is talking about. But people came from Michigan subsequently to have a discussion with him. So if the matter, the document was not on his archives, he is not a magician to have known that the document existed and would therefore have read it. You see the point? And so we may need to first of all check, and that's why I'm saying that. Well, everything we can take the feedback. But you said right now that the minister did not even answer the question. But I thought that was one of the.
He answered. In my view, he did.
Yes.
He was clear. The meeting happened. The guy went and didn't come back, and so that's where it was. Because the guy wanted to know. His question was, what has happened with this fantastic proposal? The minister says, I followed up, but I am not sure this is a genuine thing, because the guys went, they haven't come back, and so if they come back, we'll proceed.
Evans, the issue was with the report that the delegation.
But that's not the answer. That's not the question the guy asked.
No, he
wanted to find out what is government doing about these proposals that were made on the back of the trip.
Exactly. So there's a committee, there's a delegation that has come and has given their report. That's a proposal.
True.
All right.
True.
And then we have a new one, which is the drones.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between that?
That's not the question the guy asked. I'm just coming to the question. That's not the question he asked. He laid the foundation and says, in essence, what has happened to these proposals since this report was written?
Exactly.
And the minister comes and says, I followed that. I met the guys. And
he hasn't seen the report, the proposal.
I get the bit about having to, but he met the guys and he says they didn't come up with anything of substance. And so I'm waiting for them. Let's wrap up by Pius, starting with, okay, I'll probably start here from Manasseh again. What changes do you, I think you've mentioned one already about reducing the time the president has to 5 minutes. But going forward, we still need to improve this. We'll enjoy the encounters with the president because it's a time to ask questions on the behalf of the Ghanaians. So we can't say we don't want it. We'll be there. People are saying already, try to boycott it. There are calls for journalists to boycott because we don't get anything out of this. But we'll be there. So if you're going to be there again next year, what do you want to see differently?
One, I must say I don't support a boycott because this is something that doesn't happen elsewhere. So it's an opportunity to engage. If there's a problem, let's fix it. I wouldn't have a problem if 5 journalists are selected to go and sit with the president, and within an hour 30 minutes, ask questions, have the opportunity for a battle.
So it's not the quantity.
No,
it's
I would
quality.
even if 2 or 3 journalists are selected. So this is the press encounter. Evans Mensah, Bernard Avile, Kwame Sefakai, you sit down to engage the president for 1 hour. I think it would be more productive than having 20 or 30 journalists just asking questions. Yes, and not able to even do follow-ups. With that, you'd have time to engage, you have time to, you know, an interview works. Sometimes you may ask questions that are useless, but you're asking those questions just to trap the person and corner them and then be able to now fire. Yes.
You
so,
give him a ball. You give him a ball.
Yes. So if we have something like, okay, you just go in and hit once, whether it hits the target or not, you are done. I think we don't get anything from it. So going forward, I would want us to have a limited number of journalists engaging within an hour. You'll be able to get a lot from the president.
Very briefly, what in bullets, what do you want to see differently?
I think that journalists should coordinate. I mean, the GJA should be able to come in and strongly, so that it's like a team. So that even if you ask a question and the president doesn't answer, there should be a follow-up. And we're monitoring. There was, I think, one follow-up question. It was on the...
I think it was on the relationship between the statistics and the reality. And the pocket, yes.
So somebody did a follow-up. So if journalists team up together, we'll be able to get...
Finally, what changes can we expect next year, based on the feedback we've had tonight?
I mean, I think that we need to take time about this, and we need to ask you, the media, to shape the narrative. It's critical. I think that we are sometimes too quick to judge, and we are too much interested in the negatives. And I've been monitoring. I listened to Mr. Manasseh here on the discussion.
He
has spoken extensively about the positives and spoken about one or two negatives. But he characterizes as worse. But I think that going forward,
in 30 seconds,
going forward, we as journalists must just learn to begin to deal with the realities.
No, okay. I'm asking you. You know you want to improve. What do you want to improve next year?
No. I think, Evans, we just came from the meeting. We will have to do a holistic review.
So you do a review
to see going forward what can be done. But I think that what we have done today is an improvement on what has been happening, and we are faced in the right direction. And I think that we should shape the narrative and get journalists to see the positive part of what has happened than to focus on the so-called minor issues.
I am grateful that you joined us. Pius Enam Hajide is the Deputy Information Minister. Manasseh Zuriya is my colleague here, Head of the Investigative Desk. Kweku Botwe, I'm waiting for your analysis tomorrow. Always controversial when it comes out. My name is Evans Mensah. Enjoy the rest of your evening.